Hi, I'm Rachel Holmes, and welcome to my lifestyle show. If you enjoy these interviews, please share them on all your social media platforms. Now, this interview is extremely interesting with the author of Unlock Your Child. It's Susan Levin.
Hi, Susan. Thank you so much on this momentous day for taking the time to be interviewed and be on the show. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rachel. It is really a delight to be here with you.
Really is. Okay, so I always start all of my interviews with, however did you arrive at this point? It'd be great to give us some context and a backstory and, and how you've come to creating the books and your programs and where exactly you are at the moment.
Great. Well, our story is really a miracle story. It's not a unique story, but it's a miracle story, and I love sharing it. So I did not start out even someone who liked children, and I never wanted to have kids. And then I met my husband. I thought, wow, we'd have really cool kids. So then I wanted to have kids. That's the truth. But I have two children, and the older of them, I have a boy and a girl, Ben and Alina. And Ben was diagnosed with autism when he was 5. And in my earlier incarnations, I was a lawyer, and then I was a graphic designer. And then when Ben was diagnosed, I left everything and just became really fierce to find a solution to help my son be all he could be, whatever that was going to look like, and really help him to discover his potential. So we went through, Ben is 14 now, so that was 9 years ago. And we went through just a huge amount of exploration, trial and error, and I was just fierce. And, nobody ever tells you that you actually fall in love with your child. And I literally fell in love with Ben, and he became such a mission for me, and very painful. Autism for me was one of the most lonely, humiliating, shameful, painful experiences of my life. And, as an autism mom, you go through this life and you don't want to talk about it because for me, Ben's autistic behaviors were like no eye contact, no communication, no hugs, no mommy, none of that. He was just in his own world, very happily in his own world, but really I was not invited in, and it was very tough. And but I loved him, and I wanted so much for him, and I felt very like I had a lot of guilt. I thought it must be my fault if I had eaten better, if I had not worked when he was an infant, if I had, known more, done more, just he wouldn't have had autism. And even though I knew that was irrational, it felt that way. And I judged myself, and I judged him because his behaviors were really difficult. He had tantrums. He was like loud. He would run away. So it was, I felt like I was living with a Martian. I mean, it's terrible to feel that way about your own child, but this was not anything that you can prepare yourself for. Autism is a very unique and, really devastating experience, to live with the child. So I had this vision of who my child was going to be. As I mentioned, I thought, I had this great idea about who my kid was going to be and what our family was going to be. And then we got autism. And so there was this grieving process that I had to go through, of letting go of who I wanted my child to be and learning how to love and embrace the child that was actually in front of me. And I didn't want to. I mean, I was angry. I was really angry. So I was on this journey, and so I started blogging because I was so bottled up. And this is a long version of the backstory, but the short version is I started blogging, and that carried me a lot because I was able to kind of get all of it out of me every night, and people started following my blog, other families, and we ended up doing a whole series of nutritional interventions, which were game changers. And then we did something called the Sunrise Program, which is an at-home social skills development program that is child-driven, and the parents actually do it. And you bring in people. The parents go to this institute, you get trained, then you go home and you create a team. And we did this with Ben full-time, pulled him out of school for a number of years, and Ben literally emerged. And so I ended up taking my blog of 4 years and turning it into my book, Unlocked, which was published last year by Skyhorse Press here in New York City. And but what really has become my mission, Rachel, is, well, based on what I learned as an autism mom, every single member of the family in my family was affected. So it wasn't just Ben who was, in crisis. We were all in crisis. My little girl, Ben's younger sister, my husband, my marriage went into crisis. My parents were devastated, angry, frustrated. They waited their whole lives to be grandparents, and now they have this kid who won't even acknowledge or seem to know they're in the room. And what I started to see was the whole family system needed to be supported. And I got certified in nutrition and all the nutritional approaches that I had implemented with Ben. And so I was working with families. But what I kept seeing was that the mothers especially were falling apart. For every child with autism, there was a mother whose health was falling apart, whose emotional life was in the toilet, who felt guilty and isolated and scared and angry and ashamed, all those things that I had felt. And I came, and that was having an impact on the children, and their ability to care for them. And this was, something I had experienced, because I completely, as much as I was working for Ben the whole time, I really fell apart over and over again. I burned out. As I said, I was bottled up. I didn't talk about what I was feeling because I was so deathly ashamed that I judged my child. And then I judged myself for judging my child, and I'm not sure I was aware of that. And I just kept falling apart. All this good work was happening, but I kept falling apart when we were still, in the woods with the autism. And then I had a conversation. Is it okay that I'm talking this long about this? Oh, okay. So I had this conversation one day with a woman, and I love it because you hear stories like this and you're like, did that really happen? But this really happened. And I met a woman, and she had a son who was similar to Ben, textbook autistic, like rocking, swaying. Ben didn't do that, but he had no language, no eye contact, very similar. And her son had literally recovered. Like, he had gone to an Ivy League college. He was now an international speaker. He was like engaging and funny and charming and older. He was in his 30s now. And so she kind of had what I wanted. She had a son who was healthy, and who had autism. So she became a mentor for me. And she said to me one day, I kept going to her, burned out. And she said to me one day, Susan, if you don't start taking care of yourself, you are not going to be able to help your son. And his name is Ben. And she said, you are risking Ben, basically. And all these things that you're supposed to, in your mind, be doing, the only thing he needs right now is for you to take care of yourself. And it was just one of those life-changing conversations. And I went home and I thought about what she said. And it wasn't because I thought that it would be good to take care of myself. I'm a mom, so all I think about is what my kid needs, really. I don't think about, I usually put myself last. even though I'm otherwise a very functional, healthy person. But when it came to autism and my kids, but I went home that day and I thought, yeah, I need to start investing in myself. I need to rethink this whole thing. And I did. And that was about 2 or 3 years into, probably 2 years into actually working with Ben. And so I started implementing these things in my life. And I started to be happy. And it was before Ben got better. It was just, I started doing good things for myself, which, I can share a little bit more later. But, and, years went by and Ben got better. I mean, Ben does not have an autism diagnosis anymore. I don't know. He has ADHD, but, he's on the soccer team. He's studying for his bar mitzvah. There's a girl he wants to ask out about whom I'm sworn to secrecy. He's got friends. Yeah, like he's a 14-year-old kid with, definitely some delays, but he's catching up. He's catching up pretty well. And, and I don't think it was like, oh, well, I took care of myself and so Ben got better. I'm not saying that, but I think Ben's chances of getting better were exponentially increased when I started nurturing myself, feeding myself, parenting myself. And so I created Unlock Your Child, originally as a source of support for families trying to recover their kids, which is something I, really believe in, and it's still that way. But most recently, what I've realized is that it's really about moms. Because for the most part, it is the moms. Dads are amazing when they're stepping into this role, but for the most part, it's the moms. So I've decided to create, my new program is called the Autism Moms Self-Care Workshop. And it's going to be a 5-week webinar, and it's women from all over the world. And we're keeping it a little small because I want it to be really like a lot of live coaching and really intimate and build that, bond. But we've had amazing responses on our Facebook group is like exploding. People are just, sharing like, oh, this is me. I talk about my experience, and these women are like, oh, that's exactly how I feel. How did you get inside my head? I've never heard my story told like this. I'm so grateful to be in this group, like from all over the world. And, as I said earlier, when we were just talking, a lot, like I would say a good 30 to 40% from the UK, and there is a real need. And so the workshop's going to be really fun. It's going to be really just nourishing, and to get that foundation for ourselves, so that then we can bring that into our work with our kids.
I love that. What a fantastic story. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. When you started to get qualified in nutrition, was nutrition the first kind of foundational intervention that you decided to change with Ben? Did you, you hadn't been trained in nutrition before. So what made you think that the nutrition would be the foundation point, if it was?
Well, I had a personal experience with nutrition where I realized about 20, 30 years ago, probably now, that nutrition was critical, and I eliminated sugar and processed flour and garbage basically from my life, and alcohol, nicotine, caffeine. I got very, very, very unhealthy at a certain point in my life, really unhealthy. And I was taught some principles of that food is the foundation, and so that was always a go-to for me. Also, when Ben got diagnosed, the doctor said you can do drugs, you can do behavioral analysis, which we'd already tried and was completely useless, or you can try like food. Some people think food helps. So like the only option on the table was food. So, but I honestly couldn't really even boil an egg when I started. And then what happened, which was so wonderful again, was that as I learned and I got certified in these particular nutritional approaches to help my child and to help other families, I lost my chronic pain, which I'd lived with for years. I lost chronic fatigue. which was just, really rough to live with, especially given our circumstances. And I had this chronic, like 5 to 10 pounds at 40 that wouldn't go away. And that just fell away. So like those things really made me, and I keep going back to this because I feel like this is the main message that I have, is like that, to be the mom that I really grew into, I needed to look at my own nutrition as well. That was really, really important. So.
And what was the impact on Ben at that time when you did change, when you pulled out the sugar, the wheat, the dairy? How dramatic was the change in him? Was it very a quick change? Was it gradual? How did you kind of start to see the improvements?
Yeah, it was. Well, I don't think, because Ben wasn't diagnosed until he was almost 5, Rachel. He needed more, but it's kind of like trying to take someone who's drunk and bring them to God or something. Like, it doesn't work. You have to be present and available. So our children are on these opiates because that's how what I learned was that certain foods literally turn into opiates. They call them opiate peptides, but they're opiates, and they drug up their brain. So you remove the foods and already you're going to see a shift, but it takes time. And there's a lot of hidden sources of these particular foods in our standard diet. So people aren't even aware that they're having, say, gluten or MSG or some of these other toxic neurotoxins and really problematic chemicals going into ourselves and our children. So once I learned enough to really clear Ben out, and we were doing it in conjunction with this Sunrise program, we saw, pretty radical shifts in Ben. But it does, that process of clearing out and detoxing takes time. So a lot of people think that they've tried gluten-free, casein-free, which is the protein and dairy, and it didn't work for my kid. But actually, again, there's all these hidden sources. Like, who knew that mustard powder had gluten in it? This kind of thing. Who knew that natural flavors on anything usually means MSG, can often mean MSG. So for us, it took a while to actually really eliminate all of those things. And then we were seeing a lot of leaps forward.
And was Ben okay changing his diet? Was it difficult to get him to change and to eat different foods?
Yes. Yes, it was really hard. It was really hard. And I kept waiting for that magic bullet diet that he was going to suddenly, eat everything, because he was a picky eater, like most autistic children. And so that, it took a while, but we eventually did. We went through probably 5 or 6 different nutritional approaches before we landed on something called the body ecology diet, which was created by Donna Gates, who's also, she wrote the afterword to my book on autism prevention, and she's a mentor of mine. And when we started doing that, for whatever reason, Ben's palate opened up and he started eating anything I would serve him, including greens, fish, seaweed. I mean, whereas before he would only eat, originally he would only eat like mac and cheese, ice cream, milk products, because he was addicted to them. And then it was like a whole bunch of, then went grain-free and this and that free. And we landed on body ecology, and that's been really good for us. But every child's gut is really unique. So they really need to have, it's really a process of identifying what's really going to work for each child. But the nutrition, along with other lifestyle factors, is utterly foundational in my mind to the brain being able to detoxify and clear up, so that then you can start to see these skills build that you're hoping for in your child, because the behaviors and skill acquisition is an outflow of whether the brain can process information and whether the child can interact to be able to receive that information. So for me, it's an inside job. You start on the inside and then you see the transformation externally, but it's really got to start with that internal.
And did your younger daughter as well, and your husband, did you all embark on the body ecology diet together? Did you all march?
Sort of. I mean, my husband and my daughter, yes, ideally, it always works the best when the whole family does it. It just does. There's a feeling of team, camaraderie, and the stuff isn't around to be tempting, and there isn't resentment. but like I shared, I've eaten a really pristine diet of necessity for a long time, but my husband and my daughter, not so much. So, so they go out for this, they go out for that, and they, but we kept the house pretty clean of the stuff, and that just made it easier.
I love that. So step us forward then into your book. So all of your experience and your knowledge, how did that all get together then? All the blog posts, was it just, this book that you needed to get out of you and put together and help other moms and families and children affected with autism? How did it all come together?
Well, that's another miracle story. I wasn't looking to write a book. I wasn't even looking to be a blogger. I was really, for me, my kids were my life, are my life, my family is my life. But I did the blogging because I really needed to just vomit it all out of me at the end of the day because the stress was so high. And then I was invited to give a talk at my college reunion. And I was on a panel. It was a symposium of parenting was the topic. And I was the token special needs mom. So we had a gay dad, we had me, we had a minority woman, and and then we had an at-home dad. I said that. I forget what the other one was. But anyway, so we each gave a 5-minute talk, and afterwards we did a Q&A, and I was flooded with questions more than anybody else. It was like the whole audience, because autism was becoming very real in this country at that time, and so people came up to me afterwards and said, "You should write a book. You have a lot to say." And then I have a friend who wrote a book called Vaccine Epidemic. It's a scholarly book about vaccine injury nationally, internationally, and the realities of that and its relationship to autism. And so I sent her just a few segments that I put together, and I said, "What do you think?" And she sent it to her publisher. And about 6 weeks later, I got an invitation to, basically get in touch with them because they wanted to give me a contract to write a book.
Wow.
And so it was wonderful. And I really feel like it was God guided. And I wrote the book in 6 months, and it went to publication really fast. My agent said she's never seen a book go from contract to publication in so quickly. But again, a lot of it was written. And the message of the book was hope. And there's a chapter in there called We All Have Special Needs. And that's about how everyone in the family is impacted and some tips on what to do. So the book just took off. And people always ask me, how's the book selling? I have no idea. I don't follow it, but I get calls and messages on Facebook, and people reaching out to me from all over the world, emails, Bangladesh, New Zealand, Australia, everywhere, because autism is touching everywhere now. So that's been wonderful.
That's phenomenal. People need information. There's so many myths and misconceptions and
yes.
Bogus information that getting the real deal from yourself, someone like yourself, is just imperative.
Well, that's what I hear most, is that I wanted to talk to you because you understand, and you've done this, and you're a mom, and you've been through. And the book is deliberately transparent about a lot of the struggles, a lot of self-pity and rage and loss of faith, and feeling like you're a victim. And I did. And all of those things, I felt those feelings, but and feelings of fierce incompetence and insecurity, and like I shared earlier, self-judgment. And despite all of that, what I could, the one thing, Rachel, that I knew I could do was love my child. And that was what carried me, was I felt like I couldn't cook. I really couldn't cook. I'm not kidding. I really couldn't cook. I couldn't cook. I'm not a child psychologist person. I'm not a very organized person. I've become more organized, but I wasn't by nature. These things were really hard, and I wasn't good at them. But I like I said, I was fierce. I was going to do this, and I don't think I even did it that well. But you know what? Being willing to show up, and work hard and love my kid, and then learn to love myself also and invest in myself also. That was a big piece. Today I don't feel like a victim. Today I'm just so grateful.
And where are we going globally with autism? Where is it on? Where is it going? Is it exploding? Is it getting bigger? Is there,
It's exploding. It's a pandemic, Rachel. And I have a friend named Stephanie Seneff, who is a senior research scientist at MIT in Boston. And when I did my book tour, Stephanie came and spoke with me as a favor and gave a talk, and it was chilling. I'm telling you, the whole room was like, it was a room full of moms, and their jaws fell on the floor, and I think they all went home and probably took Xanax or something, because it was for real. Like, you have to take this seriously. This is happening everywhere. And Stephanie has tracked the rise of autism for now, I guess it's probably 10 years or so. And she sees, if we continue on the trajectory that we're on, based on the past decade, that we will be at 1 of every 2 children. So 50% of our kids will be somewhere on the autism spectrum in the next 10 to 15 years. And this is based on numbers, not on, newspaper articles or op-eds. This is on numbers out of MIT. And it's going to affect every single person. And there's, of course, the spectrum. So you have kids who are very high functioning, and then you have kids who are very low functioning. But all of these families is what I'm seeing. It's like, it's not just about the child on the spectrum. It's about all of these families breaking down. And the mother, who's at the foundation of every family, except for in, fairly atypical situations, but typically, the mom is breaking down because she's carrying the burden, not just for her child, but for her other children. Often the family, there's, the marriage falls apart because it's too hard. Dads need help, and they're not able to, articulate that they need help because our society isn't supportive of men that way. And it's the whole family unit is in huge jeopardy right now. So that's why in my work, it's really important to me that we look at the whole family, as well as doing everything on earth for that child.
So with your new program and your webinar series, tell us a little bit about that. We have so many moms who will be watching this broadcast and who will be affected by maybe their child who's on the autism spectrum, or someone they know, or a family member, and they're just thinking, I need to connect with you. How do they get involved with what you're doing, Susan?
So there's a couple of ways. First of all, we'll have a special page on our website for all of your listeners, Rachel, which I'll share with you. And then my website is always the best line of approach. So that's unlockyourchild.com. And anyone who has an interest in personally contacting me, I answer every single email I ever get. And that's Susan at unlockyourchild.com. And the program itself, that is going to be just, I think, a really healing and empowering experience. It's going to be a 5-week webinar with a lot of bonus coaching, a lot of bonus calls. There's going to be community is probably the most important tool in our toolbox for kind of creating a better life for ourselves, so that we can be the mothers that our children need us to be. I think just get in touch, whatever way works for you. Get in touch and become part of this community, because it's a very safe place. This community of autism moms was the first place that I knew I would not be judged. My child would not be judged. Because you go to the grocery store with your child and they have autism and they're acting out or doing something weird, and everyone in the store is looking down their noses at you, and even if they're not, they are. You just feel that judgment. And here it was like I could be myself. I could talk about all of these shameful, quote unquote, feelings that I had. And, so getting involved is just, it's just freeing. It's just a place where you can be yourself and know that it's safe and get support and learn. And there's a lot of lessons shared. It's not just me on there, it's people sharing what works for them. And and then I also offer individual coaching for families who want to learn more about the nutritional aspect, because that's my background. And we have Unlock Your Child programs, and they're also listed on the website. There's a page, Programs for Families, and you can go there. But the most important thing is just get involved in some way. We have a Facebook group. You can go to Unlock Your Child on Facebook, and you can join up there. And
they can get your book, and the book's on Amazon.
And the book is on Amazon, and it's also on Audible. Okay. So if you're a person who likes hearing your book, you can hear that. And lots of ways to connect.
Thank you. Oh, I'd love to thank you so much for your time today, Susan. It's really appreciative. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.